Welcome to the Can't Stop the Growth podcast, the home service podcast dedicated to personal and leadership development. I'm your host, Chad Peterman, and this week I am joined by a new guest. If you're ready to grow as a leader, you've come to the right place. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to another episode of Can't Stop the Growth. Really excited to bring you this episode. I think we're going to learn a ton, mainly because of our guest and his perspective. So our guest today, Jarryd Stefanik, he is the man behind making all of this look good. So he videos these, records these, edits these, all of these things, and he approached me a week or so ago and said, "Hey, are we still doing guests on the podcast?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." He said, "Well, could I be a guest?" And my initial reaction was, well, absolutely, because I can only imagine the perspective that he has, having been there firsthand on every interview we've done, as well as every future leaders talk that we have. So without further ado, would like to welcome Jarryd to the podcast. Welcome, Jarryd.
Oh, thanks, Chad. Thanks for letting me come on and talk with you for a little bit this morning.
Absolutely. So want to first kick it off by maybe just giving listeners a little bit of your background and kind of journey here at Peterman. Obviously, we started quite a few years ago together and have been trying to take over the airwaves and your video streams for the last probably 4-ish, maybe 5 years.
Yep, approaching 5. So it'll be 5 in April, I think.
Yeah,
or April or March is when it'll be 5 years here. So when I first started, I had just recently started doing video in the home service field, and had kind of started to get my bearings on what the home service field was, what it is meant to do, especially if it's done, in the right way, and how critical and crucial it was for, modern life, really. I was doing that for a few months, and then I got an email, I think through Indeed, from you saying, "Hey, we have a position opening up. Would you like to sit down and talk?" So I think we did a phone conversation first, then sit down and did an interview, and it was an opportunity that you couldn't ignore, because it was one of those things where you were just starting out doing the video and creating that content and building out what that looked like, and I had always wanted to be there at the beginning of a place, starting that out and kind of getting to see how that shaped and I guess put my own mark on it. So joined, and then that was, like I said, about 5 years ago now, and I guess the rest is history. We've been trying to do everything we can to be the premier, I suppose, source for video content, radio content in general when it comes to the home service field. And it's been a wild ride, and I can't wait to see what the next 5 years have to bring.
Absolutely. And Jarryd, can't thank you enough for all that you've done. So again, want to give listeners a little bit of background. So 5 years ago, if you looked at us as a company, we had no business probably hiring somebody to just do video. As a matter of fact, I don't know that my dad still is aware of the fact that we hired Jarryd. We kind of hired him kind of under the radar, if you will, mainly because it was an idea that I had, and just listening through, other podcasts and watching different stuff and learning different stuff, the power of video. And Jarryd, I don't know if you can speak to, just in your experience, kind of how powerful is video when it comes to kind of, getting your message out there, educating customers? What have you seen in your, 5+ years of doing this?
Absolutely. So I guess first off, huge kudos to you for having that forward-thinking idea of not a lot of people are doing this, so maybe we start now and kind of set that trend. And from what I can say about how critical video has become, I would just point to more or less how you think about figuring things out, how you think about learning anything really anymore. I was actually just having a talk with Matt, our his title is Director of
Innovation.
Yeah. So he's
Fancy.
very fancy. So he's over IT and marketing, which I'm a part of. YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world. So like I know that anytime I'm thinking about something, say I'm working on a video, the first thing I do is like I want to apply an effect or I want to try something new. The first thing I do is I look up a video tutorial. If I want to know about a company or kind of how they want to present themselves, I'm looking to see if they have a YouTube page. I'm looking to see if they have videos about themselves on their website. You get to see the people's faces. You get to see the story that they are wanting to make sure that they are presenting about themselves. And you get to see it in a way that, if done properly, is, for a lot of people, incredibly engaging. There's so much, like, you can read words on a page, but there's a decent amount of power if you can put those words into some sort of visual action, if you can see someone saying them, if you can hear kind of like some music or something to kind of help drive that emotion for the viewer. I think it has a way of sticking in your mind a little bit more because you get a bit more of a human connection, or you get more of a kind of like the different parts of the brain kind of being activated as you're viewing whatever it is that you're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look out into the world. You mentioned YouTube. Matt and I were out at Google's headquarters just a couple of days ago. I think I'm finally catching up on sleep back here on the Eastern time zone. But out there, yeah, the presence of YouTube even surprised us both. But when you start to think about it, you look at your search results, YouTube is always at the top. There's a video there. There's some sort of content. And I think that has been really our strategy, is how do we put more content out there? How do we be relevant without always trying to sell somebody something? So why don't you talk to us a little bit about, we've got the homeowner's handbook, we've got the podcast, we've got all kinds of stuff. Tell me a little bit about how you feel like that's landed with customers and the impact that's had just by the way that we go about it.
Sure. So as far as the customers who I've gotten to speak to, or the people that I've gotten to speak to who have seen some of our stuff, I get the sense that it's appreciated. I get the impression that they like the fact that we are willing to take the time and the effort to put out this information so that if they want it, they can find it, and they can find it without ever picking up the phone to call anybody. They can find some stuff out without ever having someone step foot in their home. And I think that aside from video, that business practice is something that is kind of something you need to be a modern company in a lot of ways. You need to be willing to empower your customer. You need to be willing to give out the information so that people can make informed decisions. Otherwise, with social media, with everything, people are just too hip to the fact that, if you're trying to hide something, they'll figure that out. So we wanted to, I know from the very beginning, create the presence that, hey, we're happy to help. We are here to provide information. We're here to provide education. We're here to provide value, and do it in any way we can. And was kind of the start of what the videos were, is like, here's what we do. Here's the value that we can provide. Here's the information and the education that we can provide. And we hope it helps. Even if you don't call us, we want you to be comfortable in your home. And I guess that's the main thing, right? We want people, we're a home comfort company for the most part. We want people to be comfortable in their living conditions and in their choices, and, and in their knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, I think that word of empowerment is huge, and education to me is critical. Are people going to watch every single video that we put out? No, that's not really the intent. The intent is to, I think, in my mind, is to create kind of a library that demonstrates, as Jarryd pointed out, the care and concern that we have for the customer and their home. And, while they may not watch, when they search for us and they find umpteen dozen videos of this, that, and the other, all of a sudden that feeling of, oh, well, they must really care, and we do. But sometimes you need to demonstrate that. Your company can care about customers all you want, but until you educate your customers on it, they're not going to know. And I think we've all dealt with companies that would convince us to the contrary, that they care. No meansies to the cable or gas company out there. But all in all, I think that is our biggest initiative with video and how we try to utilize that. Jarryd, talk to me a little bit. I mean, I'm sure with your background, people out there are wondering, how can I use video? What does that look like? Do they need all this fandangled stuff, or could they start out very simply? Like, what would you, if you were walking in to knowing what you know now, if you were walking into our company 5 years ago, what would you suggest knowing what you know today?
So knowing what I know today, I mean, the short answer is no, you don't need a whole lot. And I think that more people are kind of becoming aware of that. I mean, look at most things that you would consider a viral video. It's spur of the moment. It's generally speaking on a phone because, that's what you have access to. And it's just something that creates a genuine response. And that's really all you need to get started. You just need a genuine message. You need, care for what you're talking about, knowledge about what you're talking about, and just go ahead and get started. There's nothing wrong with it being less than stellar to start out with. I mean, YouTube and TikTok, they're free platforms to get started out on. They are great ways to start spreading the information. Facebook, LinkedIn as well. Go ahead and start putting stuff up there, because I think that anymore, some sort of video presence seems to be almost the standard. It's got to have, you want to have something there. It doesn't have to be perfect. When we started out, it was far from perfect. Even though I had kind of the know-how, it's not like we had a whole bunch of stuff to start out with. These microphones here are relatively recent, actually.
Yeah.
So get the best stuff that you can for what you can spare, and if it's just your phone, go for it, and then start with something that you know about and you care about, because I feel like people can really tell when you understand what you're talking about and when what you're talking about means something to you. And then try and think about, what do they want to know? What are the people that I'm trying to reach looking to find out, and provide that to them. And then, if you want to do a little bit of a plug at the end, hey, reach out to us. We're happy to help. If you want to know more, then, that can snowball from there. If it picks up and you feel that a step up in quality or a step up in style or things like that, then go for that, and you can develop it out from there. But you don't need much to start anymore. There are so many great resources, even free resources to get started. Again, YouTube, great place to look up. There are so many people out there who have ways to kind of get started with this stuff and make sure that it's reaching the people that you want to reach, and getting a message that they want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the other thing that I would add to that, just in Jarryd and I working together for now a number of years, is if you're really serious about it, is just put it on the schedule. Like, if you look at all the content that we push out, I would guess that Jarryd and I probably, in a month's time, maybe spend 2 hours together filming, maybe 3. He does a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the scripting of what we're going to say and all of that. So that makes my job super easy. But it doesn't take a whole lot of time, and you can, you think about it in an hour. Well, you don't need an hour long video, but you need maybe, 4 or 5 3 to 5 minute videos that, can hit home. Someone can consume pretty quickly. So there again, if you're serious about it, grab a stand for your iPhone and just talk into it. And what I would tell you as well is that a lot of people are afraid of the microphone, afraid of the camera. the best way to get over that is just allow yourself to be a little bit vulnerable, and it gets better with time. Jarryd can tell you, those first couple were a little bit rough. It used to take us quite a bit of time to film a 3-minute video. Now we can rip through them pretty darn quickly. Jarryd, the other thing I want to ask you about, because you've played a really vital role in our podcasts, which I was looking the other day, we're up over 120 episodes, which is just fantastic. We started it back in 2018, I believe, November of 18, so almost 4 full years of us doing that, which is crazy. From your perspective, sitting behind the camera, sitting behind kind of the recording device, what are some of the things as it relates to leadership? We're kind of switch gears here. Have you learned, just over the years and talking to people and doing things like that?
So I think that the podcast, among other things, has really shifted what I guess I would define as leadership. And I think that it's becoming more popular to see it in this light, but the idea that leadership is not management. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is really just seeing where there is a need and trying to make something better. It's helping out someone. It's giving a compliment. It's caring. It's listening, and it can be done by anyone, for anyone, anywhere. I think that for me, seeing how Peterman has developed, seeing how the podcast has grown and developed, all the things that you kind of talked about, the topics, that seems to be a major through thread, and I feel like it's a through thread because it's true. Simple things are often the true things, and so really coming into Peterman, coming into a career, I guess the job market, as it were, thinking about future goals and what those look like, thinking about, all right, well, I want to achieve a title, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. I realize that those things are pretty shallow, and that they really don't amount to much if you're not actually caring about the people you're working with, if you're not actually helping the people around you, and if you aren't actually yourself improving and becoming more impactful as a person, regardless of your title. You can get a title, and it doesn't mean anything if you're not actually leading. If you're just managing, you could probably go just about anywhere, and as long as you are reasonably consistent, you could kind of get into management. But that's not leading. That's just doing a job.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that there is a need for management and running the department or whatever it is that you're running, but the leadership is what's going to allow you to scale. You can probably manage a company that stays stagnant or grows by a few percent a year without leadership. I think you probably could. However, if you want to scale, the leadership has got to be there, because you've got to have people follow. And one thing I would point out is, to listeners, as far as the podcast goes, one of the things that, and Jarryd touched on this, is just the authentic nature of it. You're just talking. I'm sure so many people out there listening, have these great cultures, and rightfully so. But as I said about the video, you've got to tell people. You've got to let them know. I can think of literally probably a handful of people that are now on our team and are high-level performers that in some way, shape, or form came into contact with the podcast. Now, was that the intent? No. I mean, yeah, I thought it was a possibility. Sure, someone could hear this and want to join the team, but it wasn't like, hey, let's push this out there so that we can recruit more. But I will tell you that the one thing that I get from that is that, in an interview, you can sell the company and this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day, it's an interview. Whereas this type of content is genuine. This is what we're saying. It's not like we're standing up there, just blabbing about God knows what. We're just telling our story. If you've listened a lot of it is stories about, hey, yeah, we were working this week and we ran into this problem, and oh, well, it relates to kind of the podcast topic. So I think that's been really, really interesting as far as just kind of the value that we've gotten out of that on the backside, which has been phenomenal. Jarryd, the other thing I want to ask you about as it relates to leadership. So I know you're involved in our leadership academy here at Peterman Brothers. Tell me a little bit. Why don't you explain to listeners what that actually is, and then maybe give your background as far as kind of what you've done and what you've experienced through the program.
I'm sure, like any really good idea, it was probably an amalgamation of just like bits and pieces of conversations of numerous people. But Danny put together basically a program that you can do at any time. Just kind of let them know, hey, I'm starting. And it goes through the design of a home. And there are 5 different levels. Each one of them kind of have a general theme around some sort of personal development or leadership development, and ways that you can start that journey of, I guess, in a lot of ways, I feel, create an identity of who you would be as a leader, and as well as develop some skills and find some knowledge that will be critical if you achieve a leadership position, or if you're just wanting to be a better leader in general. Want to be a better leader, to yourself, to your family, whatever it is, your coworkers, even, I don't know, even if you want to be a leader to, just, I guess, strangers on a street in a way.
Absolutely.
But each level you have several different kind of tasks that you have to achieve. And honestly, what I can say going through it is it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed seeing kind of the different options and exploring which ones I feel are A, most attainable, and B, will provide me the value that I'm looking for out of the process. So the first level is a lot about, I would say, more interaction with coworkers, as well as kind of starting the personal journey of it. So you have a lot of opportunities on giving people recognition in your team or in the company. You have a lot of opportunities for finding things that you can do to improve. Each level you are required to read a book from what we call our leadership library. So we have in the lobby a few bookshelves where you can go and pick a book from, and you can read from that. Personally, I like to do Audible. So one of the first things I did was I went over there and I started looking at some titles that interested me, and started to see what was available on Audible to start listening, because that's my preferred means of ingesting content. I'm an auditory learner, so that's been very helpful for me. Or you can even pick a book, and as long as it's approved, you're able to use that as kind of an individual option for it. So customizable in that way as well, and also customizable in the fact that each level has kind of like pick and choose options for things that you can do. So it's been very eye-opening and very entertaining to discover my route through it, and I've learned a lot. One of my favorite things that I've done so far was in this current level, which the recording of this podcast and then a lunch later today will have me completing my current level, and then I'll be on to the final level, which I'm greatly excited for. But one of the things that I did recently is I picked a book personally.
Yep.
It had been on my Audible list for a little while that I had seen, and the cover just called to me.
Yep.
And I had no idea what the book was. But it was called How to Train Your Mind.
Okay.
And it was very simple in its cover. They say don't judge a book by its cover, but it grabbed my attention. It was
judge the book by its cover.
It was very cleverly put together. It just the title, How to Train Your Mind, and the O in the word how was this tangled black mess of just what looked like string, and then I'm trying to remember what letter it transitioned down to, but the string went down further in the book cover, and then it found its way into one of the other words, and by then it was like an organized, almost like labyrinth, like circular pattern. And so it just kind of, to me, it spoke to the idea of, all right, we're taking jumbled thoughts and we're turning them into organized ones. And so that on its own was like, seemed interesting.
Yeah.
It turned out to be a book on meditation.
Okay.
Something that I was not expecting, but have learned a lot from. First off, the book is like, the writer is funny. And it's formatted like a retreat is what he calls it. Okay. So he takes you through why meditation, what kind of meditation you're doing, and then in every chapter or so, he guides you through a 2-minute guided meditation. And basically what he kind of outlines is why he got into it. He was someone who was very into, reading personal development books, reading organizational books, trying to figure out how to maximize his time. And he felt like he got into a tailspin of the amount of time he was investing in these ideas, in these concepts, he was not getting back. Okay. Effectively, he would say, invest an hour or two into reading a book and planning, and he felt that maybe he was getting an hour or two back from that. So effectively breaking even.
Okay.
And it was over his time of trying to find these things that he came across meditation, what he calls mindfulness meditation, which is just the idea of sitting down in a quiet place and focusing on your breath. Okay. Not controlling your breath, focusing on it. Just the idea of taking the time to focus on something. And then he talks about if your mind wanders, that's okay. Note the fact that it's done so. Note what it is and bring it back to your breath. And basically the idea being that if you can focus on your breath for however long you meditate, you can focus on anything. Because let's face it, your breath is boring. You do it all the time without thinking. But if you can, I guess, flex your muscles, focus on something simple, something that you always have with you, you can focus on anything you do, and it calls attention to how many intrusive thoughts we have throughout the day, which is something that by going through this, because ever since reading that book, I've meditated once a day, every day since, at least. Yeah.
Good for you. That's awesome.
And I'm up to 5 minutes now. And I can tell you that just 5 minutes a day for a few weeks so far, I have become so much more aware of just how many things pop into my head unbidden. Yeah. That's how your mind works. And he talks a lot about the ways that things pop into your head, the way that information just kind of is brought back up or is presented to you, and how intrusive your thoughts can be when you aren't aware of them effectively. Yeah. And it's been so fun to kind of play with that, and it's been, I feel, something that has made me more intuitive in the fact that I am slowly feeling myself pay much more attention to things. Like, I always felt that I did a pretty good job at paying attention to things. But there have been recent times where since then I can feel myself in a conversation and I'm like thinking, I'm not really hearing what's being said. Yep. Like, I'm processing it, but in a way that's like, all right, we're kind of going to the next thing, not really being present in that moment. And it's helped me kind of do that. And I think that's something that I hope to carry with me forever. And as I continue on my journey, I think that's going to be something that I find incredibly critical, as well as it paired well with, I know, a book that you definitely enjoy. Atomic Habits was my other book for that. Yeah. For that one. So they went together pretty well. And I think that in How to Train Your Mind, he even references Atomic Habits and how a simple thing, a few minutes a day, can make all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, Jarryd. That's I feel like that gives us a really good, or gives the listener a really good understanding of, the true meaning of this Leadership Academy is not necessarily to, once you get done, like, oh, well, you're a leader. It's more so to exactly what Jarryd said is to expose people to different ideas, or the willingness to do so is probably directly correlated to your growth as a person. Who would have thought meditation would be a critical piece of leadership until you hear Jarryd say it's really helped me listen better. Well, what's the number one thing that you need to do as a leader? You need to listen in order to hear people, rather than just digesting all the information and then going and fixing a problem. So really excited to, obviously hear your firsthand account of what the leadership program has done for you. I know we have a ton of other people that are just getting started and getting into it. And I think the thing to keep in mind about the Leadership Academy, while Jarryd touched on some books and different stuff like that, there's a ton of other activities in there that are meant to kind of stretch you out of your comfort zone. So talk a little bit about those activities, this being one of them. But tell us a little bit about some of those other activities that you've done that may not be, I don't know, like, it's not listening to a podcast, it's not reading a book, but it's stretching you as a person.
Absolutely. So I mentioned it as part of the first level, taking some time to recognize, people on your team. And there are similar things like that on each level. One of them, in one of the levels, you could organize a food drive or give a donation to one of our charity partners or a charity of your choice. So it's interesting that the personal side is probably, for me, the easy part. I'm an introvert by nature. So
me too.
Spending time with myself or doing things, pursuing things on my own has always come pretty naturally.
Yeah.
For me, what's been the thing to take me out of my comfort zone is the fact that there are times where if you're going through this, you're going to have to reach out to other people. You're going to have to involve other people in some way. And some of them are very fun. And honestly, they've all been very fun, but they do sometimes feel like the effort's more than I wouldn't necessarily give it credit for, as well as the fact that it's something I wouldn't think about to do, to take a time to write out a thank you note to somebody. It's just not something I would think about in my day to day. But on 2 levels now, I've written out 5 thank you notes. The first one, like I mentioned, to my team, and then in one of them I wrote thank you notes to actually all of our charity partners, which for me was great because I had the opportunity to sit down with each of them and record a video over this past year. So I had a great kind of into some of the people and some of the spirit, and I could kind of write to that specifically, thanking them so much, for their time and everything that they're doing. But it's not something that I would ordinarily do. Yeah. And I can say taking the time to sit down and do that has been a very rewarding part, if not just as rewarding to some of the things that I've learned from the books, because you really feel, at least for me in that moment, I really felt like I understand why these things are important. Mm-hmm. I understand how simple of an act like this can be forging you on your path to being a leader.
Yeah.
Because it shows that you care. It shows there is value in those people and that you value those people, and that it's recognizing the fact that they, in a lot of ways, are why you've gotten to where you are.
Yeah.
It takes you out of yourself and puts you into the fact that, hey, so many people deserve so much credit for where I am. It's not even funny how critical the people around you are. And again, that's, I guess, one of those important things about leadership. Sure, you can lead yourself, but without a group around you, it doesn't amount to much.
Yeah.
And a leader doesn't, you've talked about this a lot of time, a leader doesn't really do. A leader doesn't create or like build or assemble in the same way like I do right now. I make these pieces of content, but a leader doesn't do that as much as they empower their team, as you have done for me in this place. You have empowered me to create these things, and that's what the leader does. I am the one making the things, and a lot of the time, I'm getting credit for, oh, that was a great video, or oh, the newest commercial came out, really liked it. You don't necessarily you hear people say that they enjoyed it, but you aren't hearing people say you made a great thing. No. But in so many ways you did, because you were the one who said, hey, I'm going to invest in this person. Hey, I'm going to give this person the agency to kind of create. I'm going to give this person the opportunity to be where they need to be to flex the, I guess, creative muscle that they have in the best way possible. And so, in the end, that's what a leader does. They give credit. They give people agency. They give people opportunity. And they just sit back and let them do their thing and are there to help them along the way if they need it. And there to give them support if they need it, but they aren't really doing the making. Yeah. And I know that for me, that's something that I've always been the person doing the making. So I know that as I progress, if leadership is my direction in the future, that's going to be something that I'm going to have to let go of. And that's probably still been one of the hardest things to wrap my mind around when it comes to this process, when it comes to looking towards the future, because I do love making so much, but I know that there's just as much, joy, if not more joy, in allowing people that opportunity in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Really, really insightful stuff there. I think that there's so many key points that we could probably talk for hours upon. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the compliment as well. It is a lot of fun. I would say that the one thing I always say is my job here is to create a platform to where everybody can be at their best, and there is nothing holding them back, and they have all the resources they need. And there's things that we need to improve upon, no doubt. There will always be things we need to improve upon, but as Jarryd pointed out, the key is we keep growing in order to provide continued opportunity to everybody. I think about a couple of weeks ago, we had 5 internal promotions, which wouldn't have happened if we weren't growing. But what it's allowed those people to do is, continue on in their career, continue to build things, continue to flex that, muscle in their leadership journey of taking on more responsibility or taking on a different responsibility or whatever that looks like. So, Jarryd, I cannot thank you enough. This has been so fun, and to me, you've provided. Well, you may consider yourself an introvert. I guess we got 2 introverts here on a podcast, which is quite the anomaly there. But is there anything that you want to leave kind of the listeners with of why you reached out for this experience, and kind of what others could do to maybe start that leadership journey in their own lives?
Sure. I think as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to people looking to start leadership in their own lives or start a journey of leadership in their own lives, shameless plug, this podcast is a pretty good place to start.
Yeah.
Mostly because a lot of the major ideas, a lot of the big stuff that I feel most people are bringing into leadership are often distilled in some of these episodes. I know most of the content is stuff that you are bringing from the things that you have read, and kind of providing it in a quicker format so people can kind of get started. And then if there is an idea or a book, or if one of the talks mentions a book that sounds good to you, or there is an idea that sounds good to you, investigate that a little bit more and try and kind of find the things that that identify with you. And I think that would be one of my biggest recommendations is you have leadership within you in some capacity. Everyone does. What that looks like is entirely dependent on the individual. And so for me, this has been about finding what that looks like for myself. So find something that you identify with, an idea, and kind of go with that, build on that, and then, especially for the other introverts out there, it's hard, interact. Find people that you can help, find people that, you can provide value to, and just try doing that. It's one of the best ways to kind of start that, because it feels good giving to people. It feels good providing value to people. And that is one of the key things that will make you realize, this is leadership, and leadership's pretty fun.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, Jarryd, for taking the time. He's actually recording this and on the podcast, which is a feat in itself. Can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. As always, if you find value in this, I'm sure that there's a ton of value in this particular conversation. If you do enjoy the content, again, feel free to leave us a review. I think the biggest thing is, and Jarryd touched on this, is that we all have leadership within us. Leaders are not born. We choose leadership, and we choose to invest in ourselves in order to help others. And if we can all remember that, I have a really good feeling this world is going to be a far better place if more and more people invest in leadership. Again, can't stop the growth. Can't thank you enough for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, I would greatly appreciate if you would rate the show or share it with someone who might enjoy it. As the name suggests, we are always looking to grow, so let me know in the comments what you thought and if there is anything you would like to hear on future episodes. Come back again soon, and always keep growing out there.